It's obviously my favorite Pixar series of films. It's my favorite Pixar franchise. It might even be my favorite Disney franchise. That is Toy Story. The Toy Story film, of course, I had on VHS tape, and I watched that tape many times. I had Toy Story 2 on tape as well, and I watched that one many more times, but both of them I loved to death. But I never really came to appreciate them as to what they represented, what they are, and quite half the jokes, especially the first two films, were until I grew up. This film is essentially a family picture, mainly because it's got a story that kids can enjoy and watch and sit down for 90 minutes to watch, but it also has a lot of jokes and a lot of lines that kids don't really understand, but an adult would look at it and probably get a laugh out of it. Particularly Mr. Potato Head. Earlier in the scene where Woody is making his speech about Andy's birthday party and how nobody's getting replaced, and how Slinky the dog is loyally always supporting Woody. And so what Potato Head does is he pulls the mouth out of his mouth slot. He's a potato head. You could put any body part wherever you want, really. So he pulls his mouth out and he taps it on his butt. He taps his mouth on his butt, basically making the kiss ass sign. And a kid wouldn't get that, but that was some brilliant animation from the animators, making something that an adult would understand and probably find really funny. There are a lot of lines all throughout this film that show a lot of that stuff. When Buzz finally shows up and Woody says, well, I can't really say what I really think because there's preschool toys present. It's just some casual stuff like that I really came to appreciate as an adult when I rewatched these films. It's a film that I'm always going to love, I'm always going to watch, I'm always going to rewatch, I'm always going to want to watch. I had a Woody and Buzz of my own, the actual life-size Woody and Buzz. With Woody had the pull string, and Buzz had all the buttons and gadgets. His wings opened up, his helmet opened and closed, and I lost him. I didn't have him anymore. I had a smaller Zurg, I had a smaller Rex, a very small Rex, and I had an Etch-a-Sketch. I think I still have, the only thing I still have is the Etch-a-Sketch. It's just in storage somewhere. I don't feel like looking for it, but I still have my Etch-a-Sketch. Everything else is gone. I think I still have access to the Zurg and the Rex one. It's just not right now. That'll be a story probably for the third film when I get to that one. In this one's more of an immediate crisis situation for these toys. Every year for a birthday, the kid gets toys, maybe for their birthday, and also for Christmas as well. And the toys are freaking out because what if they get replaced, You got the kid, he's got his favorite toy, maybe it's this Trunks action figure that's his favorite toy, and he really loves this Trunks action figure. But then for his birthday, he gets Mr. Digimon, and Mr. Digimon has all sorts of new modes of articulation. His legs can turn, so he can do that. This weird little pose here. Can you do that, Trunks? No, you can't do that. Your legs can't turn. Your feet can't turn. This guy's legs and feet, his can turn. They can even pop out so that you could do this and do all sorts of weird all sorts of things with this guy. So this Mr. Digimon might end up becoming the most popular toy in the room and the favorite toy. And Trunks may get replaced. And Trunks, if he came to life, he might feel threatened by Mr. Digimon here, whose name I've already forgotten, so it just goes to show which one's still one of my favorites. But that's just the thing that Woody was worried about, is that he didn't think he'd ever get replaced. That's why he was always playing the leader of the room. But then Andy got Buzz, because he saw that Buzz Lightyear of Star Command show, and he wanted a Buzz toy. So they got him a Buzz Lightyear action figure. Now, he's an action figure, and the first two movies show off what that actually friggin' means. And the third movie also shows off what that actually friggin' means. But we're gonna get to the fourth. I don't want to jump ahead here. I promised I'd do all four of them individually, so we're not gonna skip ahead. We're just gonna keep it to the first one here. Buzz is an action figure. He does all sorts of cool gadgets. His fingers each have individual modes of articulation. His palms can move. His arms can sway back and forth. His knees can bend. His wings come out. His helmet opens and closes. He's got like 5 different buttons. He's got a laser. He's well put together, to say the least. And Woody, he's made of stuffing. He's got a plastic little head. Sure, it might be able to turn a little bit, but the hands don't actually move like they do when he comes to life. His hands just stay still. He can't really close and open in individual fingers. And of course, his legs and arms that are made of stuffing, so they can't really hold an articulation. You cannot stand Woody up by himself. I could stand this Trunks up by himself. He might sway a little bit because his feet are a little bit, but he could stand up by himself. If I tried to stand up this Woody by himself, he'd just fall right over, because there's no plastic in between in these arms and legs. He's just fluffing. He's just fluff. So you have to get his arm and lay it next to something or someone. He lay his arm next to somebody, and then he'll be able to hold on and stay afoot and all that stuff. So, of course, Buzz is going to be the cooler toy for Andy to play with. He's growing up. When you get into that age, the older toys from your preschool era, you don't care about them anymore. You want action figures. And, of course, I kept all of my Dragon Ball figures. I kept every single one except the ones that broke. But I kept every single one that survived. Even Trunks broke here. If you could see his little head there. There's a little gap there, so I had to glue that back on. So he can't turn his head, but everything else still works. His body still moves. There's little scuffles here and there because he was heavily played with by a child. He was very heavily played with. Now he just stands on a shelf next to my Dragon Ball films. And I think that's a good place to put him. But that's basically what happens when you grow up. You don't really play with the toys. But that's what Woody's afraid of. He thought he was going to be the forever favorite. And then here comes Mr. Digimon. And then he becomes the villain. Woody, this film's protagonist, becomes the antagonist at the same time, because Buzz is his antagonist. Buzz isn't the villain, he's Woody's antagonist. He's a good guy. He's just a little bit deluded, which is one of the best parts of the film. He literally thinks he's a space ranger. He literally thinks he's a real person. Which just brings you into wondering how all of these toys felt when they initially came to life. Did they feel like they were toys, or did they feel like they were the real thing? And then it just took something to realize, oh, wow, they're not the real thing. And that also goes to, the film also shows something off when Buzz realizes he's not the real Buzz, and he tries to fly, and he ends up breaking himself. It left a little bit of a plot hole for me in that, what if you had a bunch of toys, but then your toys didn't like each other? You went to bed one day and you woke up and you realized one of your toys was broken because the other toys broke him because they didn't like him. And you're like, oh crap, how did this guy break? And you're all wondering about what the hell's going on. But But every kid wanted their toys to come to life. Every kid did. They did. They wanted their toys to come to life. Probably while they were playing with them, though, not while they were sleeping, because, that's not the time you want them to come to life. It kind of brought in a little bit of a folklore with the house elves and all that stuff. If you don't know what the folk, it's not just a Harry Potter thing. There really were folklores about house elves who might do your chores for you while you weren't looking. They never showed up while you were looking at them, but they may show up when you're not looking at them. They look out for you. They look out for the house that they're living in. It's a pretty cool little folklore thing. But that kind of reminded me of this reminded me a little bit of that. And there's a lot to think about with Toy Story. I'm always going to be thinking about it. I'm always going to be wondering about it. And of course, it is the first CG Pixar film, probably the first CG film to really do as well as it did. And it does hold up. Of course, I'm holding the Blu-ray and not the tape version. But the tape version I could put into a tape player, the VCR, and it would actually still run and look as good as this one does. This just cleans up the picture a little bit more and makes it look a little bit clearer on smart TVs. But it's still a timeless classic. The music by Randy Newman, it fits every single scene. It is one of those damn near perfect films that rarely in cinema history could ever really be surpassed by a sequel. But in my opinion, in this case, Toy Story did get surpassed by Toy Story 2. 1 and 2 were made really close together, and for a while, it was the only sequel Pixar ever did. Pixar used to not be the sequel studio. It was usually making in original stories each time. Toy Story was the big one. It was the big one, and the age of the animation does show, like when you see Andy and his mom versus the toys, and then when you see Andy and his mom in the sequel, they do look a lot better. And then when you see Toy Story 3, you can see just how well they learned how to model real people after that point. So, but you can see the emotions on everybody's face is so crisp and so clear. The movement is so well movemented. The toys move and feel like toys when they're running around. Buzz feels like he's the one with the most articulation because he is the action figure with the most articulation. Woody flops his arms around when he runs. Bo walks very calmly and carefully because she's made of glass, and if you went crazy with that, you might break her. Rex is all chic. His knees can't bend, so he's hopping around. Everything looks really well made and lived in. The toys feel like toys when they move. Even when they come to life, they still feel like toys. And that is some really wonderful attention to detail that I really appreciate from the entire team. And I think this one was the one that Lasseter actually directed, but of course with cartoons they don't really show you anything on the back, sadly, so that's disappointing. But Lasseter, John Lasseter, he was the one that befriended Hayao Miyazaki, and for the third film we got to see Totoro, a plushed stuffed Totoro at Bonnie's house. So we're going to talk about that when we get into the third one as well. But he was in all three of these. And, he's one of those big shots, the company. And is probably one of the reasons why this stuff was so good. If you want to look him up, you can feel free to do that on your own. I usually like just to talk about these from the audience standpoint, from a viewer standpoint, from how it affected me personally when I watched this. I collected the toys as much as I could find of them, and I did play with them just like I imagined Andy would. And I would, as a kid, imagine they'd come to life just like Andy, just like in Toy Story. They never did, of course, but hey, and heck, I think my brother might have even moved the Buzz slightly into a different position just to trick me into thinking he did come to life when I was a kid. That's how you trick them. That's how you do it. But I don't really want to talk about the story of Toy Story because everybody's seen this movie. You don't need me to repeat the story. It's just this looking back at the movie. It's perfect. Toy Story is perfect, and is only rarely that a film like this ever gets surpassed, which means Toy Story 2 is even better.